In this episode of Biblical Unlocks, we will go through a chapter of the Bible and make it make sense in your life today. Studies routinely show that reading your Bible regularly significantly lowers symptoms of depression, anxiety, and anger, whilst also increasing forgiveness, compassion, and a sense of purpose. So if you enjoy episodes like this, please consider following and rating the show. It's free, helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Biblical Unlocks. Today we're going to go through Exodus chapter 18. And this chapter, if we have a little bit of context here, we had the deliverance, worship, and testing and first battle of the Israelites in Exodus 14 to 17. Now Israel is going to need a little bit of structure to become a functioning nation, and Exodus 18 is going to provide that structure. It shows that divine calling and charismatic leadership must be paired with some wise systems and shared responsibility and even outside counsel to flourish. And this is actually going to foreshadow the structures that we're going to see in Deuteronomy. So this is what is going to happen. In Exodus 18, we're going to see the visit of a character called Jethro, or Ruel, who's Moses' Midianite father-in-law. You'll remember that he is the father of Moses' wife, and he's going to bring Moses' wife and his sons, and they hear the whole story of Israel's deliverance. They praise God, and he's going to give some wise counsel about leadership. So without further ado, let's read Exodus 18. Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses and for his people Israel, how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt, after Moses had sent away his wife Zipporah. His father-in-law Jethro took her back, along with her 2 sons. The name of the one was Gershom, for he had said, I have been an alien in a foreign land. And the name of the other was Eleazar, for he had said, the God of my father was my help, and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, along with Moses' sons and wife, came into the wilderness, where Moses was encamped at the mountain of God. He sent word to Moses, I, your father Jethro, am coming to you, with your wife and her 2 sons. So Moses went out to meet his father-in-law. He bowed down and kissed him. Each asked after the other's welfare, and they went into the tent. Then Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, all the hardship that had found them on the way, and how the Lord had delivered them. Jethro rejoiced for all the good that the Lord had done to Israel in delivering them from the Egyptians. Verse 10, Jethro said, Blessed be the Lord, who has delivered you from the Egyptians and from Pharaoh. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods, because he delivered the people from the Egyptians when they dealt arrogantly with them. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, brought a burnt offering and sacrifices to God. And Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law in the presence of God. Verse 13. The next day Moses sat as judge for the people, while the people stood around him, mourning until evening. When Moses' father-in-law saw that he was doing what he was doing for the people, he said, What is this that you are doing for the people? Why do you sit alone while all the people stand around you from morning until evening? Moses said to his father-in-law, Because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have a dispute, they come to me, and I decide between one person and another, and I make known to them the statutes and instructions of God. Moses' father-in-law said to him, What you are doing is not good. You will surely wear yourself out, both you and these people with you, for the task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone. Now listen to me. I will give you counsel, and God be with you. You should represent the people before God, and bring their cases to God. Teach them the statutes and instructions, and make known to them the way they are to go, and the things they are to do. You should also look for able men among all the people, men who fear God, are trustworthy, and hate dishonest gain. Set them as officers over thousands, hundreds, fifties, tens. Let them sit as judges for the people at all times. Let them bring every important case to you, but decide every minor case themselves. So it will be easier for you, and they will bear the burden with you. If you do this, and God so commands you, then you will be able to endure, and all these people will go to their homes in peace." So Moses listened to his father-in-law and did all that he had said. Moses chose able men from all Israel and appointed them as heads over the people, as officers over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. And they judged the people at all times. Hard cases they brought to Moses, but any minor case they decided themselves. Then Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went off to his own country. Alright, time for some deep biblical unlocks now. We saw in verse 1 to 7, Jethro, who was called Ruel earlier in the story, he brings Zipporah, who's the wife of Moses, and the two sons, to Moses, who is currently in the wilderness. Moses pitched a tent of meeting outside the camp, and when Jethro heard about all that God had done for Israel, and how the Lord delivered them, he rejoices, and he offers a burnt offering and sacrifices to God. And Aaron and the elders eat with Moses' father-in-law, Jethro. So what does this mean? There's a reunion here, right? Family reunion. And we saw this in Genesis 50, how a family torn apart by Joseph's story and later exile was reunited amid a renewal of the nation. And this is exactly what's happening with Jethro. Jethro is reunited to his family. Zipporah and the two sons, Gershom and the second son, Eleazar, are all reunited together because of renewal of this nation. And Jethro sacrifices. Jethro, if we remember from Exodus, I think it's either 3 or 4, is a Midianite priest, and he praises Yahweh. But notice, he's a Midianite, an outside worshipper who worships Israel's God in recognition, right? In recognition of the fact that Israel's God was able to defeat the so-called Egyptian gods, and that he even says it here. He says, Jethro rejoiced. He said in verse 10, "Blessed be the Lord who has delivered you from the Egyptians and from Pharaoh. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods, because he delivered the people from the Egyptians when they dealt arrogantly with him." In verses 8 to 12, Jethro, again, he listens to the account that Moses describes, and the entire sequence: God's call, the signs, the plagues, the crossing, the people's deliverance, and he says what I just did. "Blessed be the Lord, for he is greater than all other gods." What does this mean? His recognition and his reaction to all of the events that have taken place affirms God's identity, but also Moses' role. He is an outsider who can see things Israel has normalized, and his worship is a verdict that he makes on all of the events that have taken place. He says, well, Yahweh is greater than all other powers. And he highlights something, that those who are closest to a movement, those who are the leaders of the Israelites, can actually become blind to the dysfunctional practices that are present within them. And we're going to see that later on. Jethro, in verses 13 to 18, he looks at Moses and he sees how he acts as a sole judge for the people. From morning until evening, he acts as a judge. He notes two problems. Number one, Moses is going to wear himself out. And number two, the people are going to get tired standing before him. And Jethro says, what you are doing is not good. In verse 18 he said, you will surely wear yourself out, both you and these people with you, for the task is too heavy for you. So he is the one arbitrating their conflicts, their tribulations, their trials, and all of this stuff. But what is interesting here is you sometimes need external counsel to help you determine whether or not what you're doing is sustainable and healthy for your community. And Jethro is honest and frank, and it's quite important, because if he doesn't give honest counsel, the corrective practical advice that he offers would go on deaf ears, and he would not give what is necessary. And in verses 19 to 23, Jethro gives a delegation plan, if you will. He says, "Select capable men who fear God, who are trustworthy and hate dishonest gain. Then appoint them as judges over groups of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens, and let them decide routine disputes, and only the difficult cases will be brought to Moses." Jethro explains the goals, how it lightens Moses' loads, it makes justice accessible, and it trains people to handle responsibility. So, the recommended criteria: able, fear God, trustworthy, hate dishonest gain. So what does this mean? It blends competence, that is, they're able and they're trustworthy. I mean, that's also a part of the character, right? So competence and character here. They have to fear God, they have to be trustworthy, they have to hate dishonest gain. And Jethro prioritizes integrity, moral integrity, over technical skill. And they have a tiered system. So they have thousands, hundreds, fifties, tens. What this is, or why this is important, is because it creates, again, a manageable caseload, and also a local leadership. You've got government, you got local governments, you got and so on and so forth. And this is something we see even right now. It also prevents bottlenecks, right? So it's not that everyone has to go to one person. Instead, you have delegations that are ruling over particular areas locally, then on a more regional level, and so on and so forth. And the plan is not abdication. What that means is this does not imply that Moses loses his utmost and his final authority, but what it is teaching the statutes. That's what he says in verse 20. Teach them the statutes and instructions, and make known to them the way they are to go and the things they are to do. He is delegating and transmitting his knowledge so that those under him are able to adequately assess caseloads, so that he is not burdened by the excessive number of trials that he has to deal. Verses 24 to 27. Moses listens to his father-in-law. He does everything he tells. He selects able men, appoints them as judges, instructs them in the statutes, and he only lets the difficult matters come to him. And what does this imply? Moses is obedient to his Midianite father-in-law. What does it demonstrate? It demonstrates humility, wisdom, effective leadership over his personal arrogance and ego. And this implementation will become a foundational judicial practice, and it's going to show how God's providential ordering requires sometimes external counsel. Sometimes you're going to have to ask someone else. Sometimes another person who may not be under the covenant may give you sound advice. You have to think about why Moses met Jethro. Why do you think it is? Why do you think Jethro came here? Everything here happens for a reason, purpose. And sometimes that purpose may not be what you expect. And in this case, his purpose, or the purpose that Jethro was fulfilling, was to provide advice to Moses. Advice which would help institutionalize Israel and help Israel find a common ground and structure that will help the nation in times to come. So, important, stop assuming that you must do everything, because it's a prideful myth. Sometimes you need to ask help from others, and sometimes you need to listen to the advice of others. So that's it for this episode of Biblical Unlocks. This show is designed to help you keep up your habit of reading the Bible, understanding the Bible, and applying it in your daily life. I upload daily, so if you don't want to miss tomorrow's episode, feel free to rate the show and follow. Otherwise, just have a blessed day. And always remember, if you're not in your word, you're in your feelings. Godspeed.